What does it take to rise to the top of Cosa Nostra? And how does it always end? This is your life in the Mafia. Every rank, from the Brooklyn corner to a seat on the commission, every oath, every tribute. Here's what it really looks like. You are 14 years old, and you are standing on a street corner in Brooklyn because there is nowhere better to be. The year does not matter. The corner never changes. There's a social club across the street with a curtained window and an espresso machine you can hear hissing from here. You watch the men who go inside. They do not hurry. They wear pressed shirts on a Tuesday afternoon when everyone else is at a job. They double park a Lincoln and nobody writes a ticket. You are 14, and you already understand the most important thing on this street. Some men ask permission. Some men do not. You want to be the second kind.
You run errands for 'em. You carry coffee. You watch the corner for cops, and you whistle when a cruiser turns down the block. They call you kid. They give you $20 and a slap on the cheek. $20 when your father makes $90 a week breaking his back at the rail yard. You do the math. The math is not complicated. You start to learn the geography that nobody draws on a map. This block belongs to that crew. That bakery pays this man every Friday. The avenue is a border, and you do not cross it without a reason. You learn who to nod to and who to look through. You learn that respect here is not a feeling. It is a currency, and you are too poor to spend it yet. You learn to keep your mouth shut. You learn that the man who talks is the man who disappears. You learn that the worst thing on this earth is not a beating. The worst thing is a name. The name they spit when a man cooperates. The name that follows his family for 3 generations. You are 14, and you have already decided you will never be that name. You go home. Your mother asks where the money came from. You tell her you swept a store. She knows you are lying. She says nothing. That silence is your first lesson in the only law that matters here. They call it omerta, the code of silence. You did not have to be taught it. You were born inside it. The cycle begins. You are 19 now, and you are an associate, which is the polite word for nothing. You are not made. You may never be. You are not even allowed to know how many men in that club are. You work for a crew, and you do the work nobody made will touch. Because if you go to prison for it, you go alone, and nobody upstairs gets a scratch. You collect. You run a sports book out of a candy store. You move stolen cigarettes by the truckload and swag televisions out the back of a warehouse on Flatlands Avenue. You break a man's hand because he is 3 weeks late on a loan that carries 3 points a week, which is 156% a year. And you say the number out loud because the number is the whole business. You earn. That is the only verb that matters. You bring money up to your capo every week, and you keep a piece for yourself. And the size of that piece depends entirely on how much you make him. Nobody pays you a salary. There is no salary. There is what you take. You learn the rackets the way a tradesman learns a trade. Loan sharking, extortion, numbers, hijacking. A piece of every construction job in the borough, because the cement does not pour and the union does not work unless your people say so. You learn that violence is not a feeling. It is a tool. You pick it up when the job calls for it, and you put it down when it does not. You learn that the Shylock business runs itself once a man is in deep enough. He borrows $2,000 to cover a debt, and the VIG eats him alive, and soon he is paying you forever, and the principal never moves. You learn that the best extortion is the kind a man pays gladly, because what he is buying is the promise that nobody else will come to his door. You are good at this. That is the part no one warns you about. You are good at it, and being good at something pulls you deeper than any threat ever could. You are 23 when you do your first real piece of work. A man who skimmed, a man who talked. They do not tell you the why, because the why is not yours to know.
They tell you a place and a time, and they hand you a gun that has no history, and they tell you it will be gone by morning, and so will the why. You go home after, and you cannot eat for a week, and then one morning you can, and that frightens you more than the thing you did. This is the cost they never name. Not prison, not a bullet. The part of you that used to flinch, gone, and you cannot remember the day it left. You are 30, and they tell you the books are open. You do not know what this means until a man you have known your whole life puts a hand on your shoulder in the back of the club and says nothing. And that nothing means everything. The books were closed for 19 years after a meeting upstate went wrong in 1957, when the bosses of the whole country gathered at a farmhouse in Appalachian, and the state police rolled in. And the secret stopped being a secret. They open the books slowly. They open them for very few. They are opening them for you. There are rules. You must be a man of full Italian blood, your father's line, no exceptions, because trust here runs through ancestry the way water runs downhill. You must have made your bones. They must know with certainty that you have killed when you were asked to, because a man who has crossed that line can be controlled by the men who can prove it. You cannot buy this. You cannot fake it. You have spent 10 years auditioning for a job that does not advertise. You are brought to a room. There are 8 or 10 men there, and you know most of them, and you have never seen them like this. Formal, quiet, arranged in a circle like something older than any of them. They prick your trigger finger with a pin. They press the drop of blood onto a card with the face of a saint. They light the card and place it burning in your cupped hands, and they tell you to repeat the oath while it burns. And you say it. As burns this saint, so will burn my soul if I betray this family. You came in alive. You leave dead. You will only ever leave dead. You are a made man now, a soldier, a button, the lowest rank in the only organization that will ever own you completely, and you have never been prouder of anything in your life. You are assigned to a crew under a capo. You have a card you cannot show anyone, a status you cannot speak of, and a target on your back that did not exist yesterday. Being made does not make you safe. It makes you visible. Now the rules apply to you with full force, and the punishment for breaking them is no longer a beating. It is the thing they never say out loud. You earn for your skipper, and your skipper earns for the boss, and money flows up the way it always has. Every week, in cash, in envelopes, counted twice. You kick up. You always kick up. The day you stop kicking up is the day you become a problem, and problems get solved. You learn the etiquette of a made man, which is mostly the etiquette of fear dressed up as respect. You do not raise your hand to another made man without permission from above. You do not look at another made man's wife. You do not deal narcotics where the boss says no, though half the family does it anyway, quietly, because the money is too good to leave on the table. You answer when you are called. You come when you are sent for, even if you suspect the room you are walking into is the last room you will ever see. And you learn the silence again, deeper now. You do not talk on the phone. You do not write anything down. You speak in fragments and nods and a language of omission, because every word you say is a word that can be played back to a jury one day. You are 40, and you are a capo regime, a captain, a skipper. You run a crew of your own now, 8 or 10 soldiers and a loose army of associates beneath them. And every dollar they make rolls uphill to you, and you take your cut and push the rest to the administration. You are a small king of a small kingdom. A few blocks, a union local, a stretch of the waterfront, the garbage carting in 3 neighborhoods. You sit in the back of a restaurant, and men come to you with problems, and you solve them. And the solving is worth more than any racket, because the man who controls the peace controls everything. Your crew brings you tens of thousands a month, and you keep a third and push the rest up,
And on a good year, you clear more than a doctor, and you cannot tell a soul. You launder it through the restaurant, through the carting company, through a brother-in-law's cash business, and still it piles up faster than you can wash it. So some of it goes into a wall, and some of it goes into a hole in a relative's backyard. And you are wealthy in a way that can never be spent in the daylight. You learn to manage men, which is harder than any robbery. You settle who owes whom. You keep a hothead from starting a war over an insult. You decide which earner gets protected and which screw-up gets put on the shelf. You are a middle manager with a body count, and the spreadsheet lives entirely in your head.
You learn that the higher you climb, the less you touch. You do not collect anymore. You do not break hands. You give a look, a word, a nod, and other men do those things. And you have learned the most dangerous lesson of this life, that distance is not innocence. The order is the act. You are guiltier now than you have ever been, and your hands have never been cleaner. You miss your daughter's confirmation because a sit-down ran long. You miss your son's whole childhood because you are always at the club, always at the table, always solving. Your wife stops asking when you will be home. That silence used to comfort you. Now, it just sits at the dinner table, where you are not. You are paranoid all the time, and you are right to be. You sweep your car for bugs. You hold the real conversations on a walk, in the open air, the radio loud. Because the walls have been listening since 1970, since they passed a law called RICO that let them charge the whole family as one enterprise, that turned a single soldier's confession into a case against everyone above him.
You are 50 when they make you consigliere. It is not a promotion the way the street thinks. It is sideways and upward at once. You are the counselor now, the advisor. You do not run a crew. You sit beside the boss and you tell him the truth when no one else will. And you mediate the disputes that would otherwise end in blood, because every funeral draws heat, and heat is bad for business. You are the family's memory. You know which capos are skimming and which are loyal, and which are talking to a federal agent in a parked car at 4 a.m. You know where the money is buried, literally, and which judges take an envelope and which cop on which precinct can be reached. You carry all of it in your head, because none of it can ever be written down.
You learn that wisdom in this life is just fear that has been organized. You counsel patience. You counsel against the war the young capos want, because war is expensive and loud, and it puts everyone in a cell. You are the brake on a machine built with no brakes, and you are tired in a way sleep does not touch. Your oldest friend is found in the trunk of a car at the airport. You knew it was coming. You may have even agreed to it, in a room with a nod. You go to the funeral. You comfort his widow. You feel nothing you are allowed to show. And on the drive home, you understand that you stopped having friends the day you got made. You only ever had assets. And assets get liquidated. You are 55, and you are the underboss.
You are second in command now, the street boss. When the boss is in prison, and the boss is almost always in prison, you run the family day to day. You carry the boss's authority and the boss's risk. And you have learned that the number 2 job is the most dangerous chair at the table, because you are close enough to the throne to want it and close enough to be blamed for everything that goes wrong. You command the capos. Their tribute flows to you, and you push it up and skim your share. And you settle the wars the consigliere could not talk down. You decide who gets made and who gets clipped, and you sign those orders with a word, and the word is enough. You feel the walls closing in a way you cannot point to. Men you have known for 30 years stop returning calls. A capo you trusted is seen leaving a building with no good reason to be there. The agents are around more now, parked, patient, photographing the funerals and the weddings and the slow walks. You tell yourself it is nothing. You have told yourself it is nothing your whole life. The difference now is that you no longer believe it.
You think about the man you were on that corner at 14. You could not have imagined this. You also could not have imagined the price. 2 of your friends are dead by the order of men you eat dinner with. Your son will not speak to you. Your name is on a federal indictment in a drawer somewhere, waiting. And you know it is waiting. And you go to work anyway, because there is no door marked exit. There is no retirement in this thing. You do not put in your 20 years and walk away to Florida. You die at the table, or you die in a cell, or you die in the trunk of a car. And everyone at the club already knows which men are likely to die which way. You are 60 when they make you boss. The Don, the representative, the head of the family. Everything flows to you now. Every racket in the borough, every union, every envelope, every dollar squeezed from every corner of the territory your name now controls. You can make any man with a word. You can end any man with a word. You answer to no one inside the family. But you do not answer to no one. Above the bosses sits the commission, the board of directors of this entire underworld, the heads of the major families who meet to divide territory, approve new bosses, and rule on the disputes that span the whole country. They formed it in 1931 to stop the families from slaughtering each other over scraps, and they have killed bosses who acted without a vote. You sit on it now. You have a seat at the only table that matters, and you have learned that even a king kneels to the board. You have power that men kill for, and you cannot enjoy any of it. You cannot spend the money openly because the tax men are patient and the agents are patient, and a flashy boss is a dead boss, or a convicted one. You live modestly on paper. You drive a plain car. You take the train. You hold court in the back of a social club, exactly like the one you watched across the street when you were 14. And you watch the kids on the corner watch you, and you know what they are thinking because you thought it too. You make the decisions now that you once only carried out. A capo is skimming and lying about it, and you must decide whether he is worth more alive and earning or dead and an example. A war is brewing with a rival family over a stretch of the airport, and you must decide whether to spill blood or split the take, and either choice costs you. You sit at the head of the table, and you understand that every seat below you wants this chair, and the ones who want it most are the ones who smile widest. You sleep badly. You eat with your back to the wall. You count the men you trust on one hand, and you know, in the honest hours before dawn, that the hand is shrinking, and that the math of this life only ever runs one direction. You learn that you reach the top of a mountain that is mostly a grave. The men who built this thing are dead or in prison. The maid membership is thinned. The young ones talk. The old code is dying. And you are the warden of a fortune you cannot show, and a power you cannot use, and a life sentence you signed in blood at 30 in a room full of men who are mostly gone now. You were clipped or you were caught. There is no third ending. The car door opens on a quiet street, and you do not hear the rest. Or the agents knock at dawn with a warrant thick as a phone book and a wiretap that has been running for 6 years. And a soldier you made, a man whose blood once dripped onto a burning saint, sits in a federal office and gives them every name to save himself. He becomes the thing you swore you would never be. The rat, the cooperator, the one whose name is spit for 3 generations. And he walks into the witness stand, and he points at you. And the oath that bound you both turns to ash exactly the way the saint card did. And you understand at last that the code was never a wall. It was only a story the strong told the weak, so the weak would die quietly. You sit in a cell. You are 70 years old. You have a number now, not a name. The family you ran is a federal exhibit. Your capos are dead or cooperating. Your soldiers are scattered. And the territory you bled for belongs to younger men who never knew your name and would not respect it if they did. And somewhere in Brooklyn,
On a corner that has not changed, a 14-year-old boy stands and watches the men go into a social club with a curtained window. He watches them double park and walk slow and ask no one's permission. He does the math. The math is never complicated. The cycle continues. If you made it to the end, you survived a life most men only fear. Tell us in the comments which world you want to wake up inside next. The Empire, the throne room, the trading floor, the monastery. Subscribe so the next life is waiting for you, and we will see you at level 1.